To break it all down, Sara Nelson, the international president of the Association of Flight Attendants. First of all, thank you for being with us. Really excited to hear your perspective and hear you shed light on this, because it's just, I mean, the only word I can use to describe it is insane. But Sara, Frontier originally actually suspended the flight crew for not following protocol in the case that we had at the very top of this particular section, using that duct tape. But you actually spoke out in defense of the crew and called on Frontier Airlines to immediately support their employees so they could be in a safe work environment. You said, quote, management should come to their senses. So what did you intend to convey besides what is obvious? Was this a PR damage report? Was this in response to them being fearful of what their flight attendants would look like to the public?
I'm not really sure what they were thinking here, because the flight attendants have been put in an impossible situation. They've been on the front lines dealing with this issue. In fact, we're heading closer to 4,000 reports than we are to the 3,000 number. And if we stay on this track, we're going to have more reports of unruly passengers in this year alone than we've had in the entire history of aviation. This is something that we haven't necessarily been trained for. And the Frontier flight attendants didn't even have tools that other airlines have on board, like tough cuffs, in order to restrain someone. So all they had was that duct tape. And after 3 of them had been assaulted and this man was violent, they did what they could do to contain the situation, to make sure that he wasn't hurting anyone else. And they're charged with that. So if Frontier was then saying that they were going to suspend the flight attendants, they're sending a message to the entire public that this is okay. And that is what we're talking about. That is not an environment that flight attendants can continue to go into. The members that I represent are telling us through the survey last week that they are already feeling this way. They're already questioning whether or not it is safe for them to go to work. We don't need to do anything to add to this situation.
You know, it's interesting. The video went viral. The young man who was duct taped himself, and again, we're still verifying his name, but he actually tweeted out a response to all of this, talking about how demoralizing that it was for him to be duct taped, that people were ridiculing him. He said this was the most dehumanizing experience of my entire life. I was mistreated by a staff of a professional airline. Just to make matters worse, this video has gone viral and will never disappear. My life will never be the same. Interesting that he had that response when clearly he is adding fuel to the fire, so to speak, in a situation. We don't know exactly what prompted everything, but in any event, what is the actual response from flight attendants? What should they have done to try to de-escalate this, if that was even possible?
Well, listen, flight attendants are trained in de-escalation, and actually there are thousands of flights that take off and land every single day without event, and that is usually due to the expert skills of flight attendants in de-escalating. The number of these events going on board right now, this is not something that our training ever contemplated. This is not an atmosphere that we ever contemplated. We are stuck there in the cabin. There's no place to go. You can't pull that plane over. You can't call for help. You can't have someone removed. And increasingly, we have full flights. So you can't even separate passengers. So some of the tools that we would normally use in de-escalation are not even available. And in this situation, this man groped 2 of the flight attendants and punched another one. And at this point, he's out of control, and they're doing anything that they can. They're using the tools available. So the problem here is really the tools that the flight attendants have on board, what the airline's providing for them, and the situation at hand that is out of control and not typical for our work environment, not what we are typically trained to handle. So in this case, it was really important for Frontier to reverse course and do the right thing. And I do want to recognize that once the top management got involved here, they recognized right away that they needed to do that, express support for the crew, because this was really going to add to a very dangerous situation for all crew across the industry, frankly.
Right, and to other passengers, to be quite honest with you.
That's right.
This is dangerous for everybody on board. It's almost like, I know flight attendants are getting their self-defense training, but passengers might need some self-defense training. What do you want the federal government to do?
So what we need to do, Steve Dixon, who is the FAA administrator, put in place a zero tolerance policy on January 13th, because these events started to go on the rise around January 4th. And so that is in place, but there is an expiration date. And we believe that he needs to just simply say the zero tolerance policy is permanent. It stays in place. No second chances if you're acting out on a plane, because we have a very serious epidemic here and we got to get this tamped down. Furthermore, the DOJ needs to take these reports from the FAA and prosecute criminally. In many cases, more than half of these cases, alcohol is a contributor. People are inebriated here and they need to sober up. And we often find that when there's criminal prosecution right now under the law, people can face up to 20 years in prison. And you prosecute some of these cases, some people end up in jail. And I think there's going to be a lot of sobering up, and that's what we need.
So are you saying that, and I just have to wrap this segment up, but are you saying that indeed people are facing criminal charges and they are serving time for some of these outbursts?
Some people have in the past. What we're saying is that the DOJ needs to especially work on this right now, put together a task force, focus on these in-flight events, and make sure that they're prosecuting it very publicly so that all of the public can understand those consequences. I know you want to know what's causing these events, and I'll tell you it has been miscommunication and disparate communication about this pandemic, about what we need to do. Everyone is coming to the door of the airplane really, really stressed out and confused about what the procedures are. And then when someone like a flight attendant is giving them specific safety instructions, they are thinking that that is infringing on their rights, as opposed to what people used to think, which is we're in this together to do this magical thing called flight. So we need to get back to that spirit, and that's really what's wrong here.
Yeah, Sara, thank you for giving us your take, because really it is more than just a mask. It's about public trust, it's about communication, and it might be about putting down the booze too. Sara Nelson, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank